Hello, I'm glad you're here. Maybe you felt it too. The quiet ache of wondering if you've become too much, if your presence feels heavy to the ones you love. It's not always spoken, but it lingers. This video is a gentle invitation to explore something deeper. The quiet strength that still lives in you, the dignity that never fades, and the truth that your worth has never depended on what you do, but on who you are. Let's take this walk together, slowly, tenderly. You are not a burden, you are still becoming. There's something we all carry, often without realizing it. The quiet belief that we are only as good as what we produce. Maybe it started early, when praise came for getting good grades, for being helpful, for achieving something others could see. Maybe it grew stronger as we worked, raised children, kept homes running, showed up day after day without ever needing to be reminded. And maybe over time, without anyone saying it directly, we started to believe, as long as I am doing something useful, I matter. But what happens when that usefulness fades? When the job ends? When the schedule thins out? When the people who once needed us no longer ask for anything? It can feel unsettling, even frightening. Not just because we have more time on our hands, but because we've tied our worth to a kind of busyness that no longer fits this chapter of life. Have you ever sat in a room and wondered if you're contributing enough just by being there? Have you found yourself apologizing for not doing more, even when you've already done more than most people ever will? Have you said, "I don't want to be a bother," when all you really wanted was to be included? These aren't just passing thoughts. They're echoes of a culture that celebrates hustle and overlooks stillness. But you don't have to keep living by those rules. The Stoics, ancient as they are, saw this clearly. They believed the purpose of life wasn't to impress or accumulate or achieve endlessly. It was to live with virtue, with honesty, with integrity, with clarity of soul. They understood that a person's value doesn't come from what they do in the eyes of others, but how they live in alignment with what is right and true. Marcus Aurelius never wrote about proving yourself. He wrote about being yourself, fully, quietly, steadily. There is a kind of freedom that comes when we no longer try to impress anyone. When we let go of the need to constantly be useful and begin to simply be present. Can you imagine that kind of freedom? What would your day look like if you didn't feel guilty for resting? What would it feel like to stop measuring yourself by how much you got done? Maybe you'd sit a little longer in the sun. Maybe you'd write something in a notebook, not to publish or show anyone, but just because your thoughts matter. Maybe you'd watch the birds and let yourself believe that your noticing is a form of prayer. You see, being busy doesn't make us worthy, and slowing down doesn't make us less. The truth is, your value hasn't changed just because your pace has. You are not less because your phone doesn't ring as often. You are not less because your schedule has more white space than it used to. You are not less because your hands do less lifting and more remembering. You are still you. And the people who loved you at your busiest do not love you more because of what you did. They love you because of who you are. The real you isn't in the errands or the checklists or the to-dos. It's in your voice when you speak softly to someone who needs comfort. It's in the way you notice what others miss. It's in the way you remember what mattered and gently remind others not to forget. I wonder, how often have you forgiven others for needing rest, but denied it to yourself? How many times have you told someone else, "You've done enough," but refused to say the same to the mirror? This is not a call to stop caring or contributing. It's a call to shift how you define contribution. What if the most meaningful thing you offered today wasn't your effort, but your presence? What if your wisdom, your attention, your ability to slow down when the world is speeding up was exactly what someone else needed? The Stoics would say, don't waste time chasing things you cannot keep. Invest instead in the kind of character that time cannot take away. And they were right, because no one can take away your honesty, your patience, your ability to love without needing to be loud. These are not youthful traits, they are timeless ones, and often they only deepen with age. But still, that voice may whisper, "What am I good for now?" You are good for exactly what you were always good for, living fully and loving deeply. That hasn't changed. Do you remember how, even when you were busy, you longed for peace? For a moment to breathe? To just be? Now that you have it, don't treat it like absence. Treat it like arrival. There is a space you occupy that no one else can fill, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, who you've become through all you've lived. Think of all the versions of you the world has seen: the strong one, the caregiver, the provider, the planner, the fixer, the listener. Now, it is time to meet the version of you who simply is, who doesn't need a title to belong. Can you give that version space to breathe? You don't need to be impressive anymore. You just need to be honest. With yourself, with others, with life. There is beauty in being unhurried, in being less efficient but more present, in not needing to carry everything anymore. You've already carried so much. Let yourself set it down. Let someone else admire the path you've cleared. Let your existence, not your effort, be the proof of your value. If you still struggle to believe it, try this. Think of someone you love deeply, not for what they do, but for who they are. Someone whose presence comforts you. Someone who doesn't need to try to be meaningful, because they just are. Now ask yourself, why should that not be true of you? You are not your resume. You are not your to-do list. You are not your income or your output or your calendar. You are a soul, and your soul is still glowing. The glow may be softer now, but it's no less warm. Let go of the old equation. Do more equals be more. It was never true. What's true is this: you don't have to do more to be enough. You already are. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from no one asking. No one asking what you think. No one asking what you remember. No one asking for your help, your guidance, your opinion. It's not that people are unkind. They're just busy, distracted, focused on moving forward. But for those of us who have spent a lifetime being the one others turned to, the one they relied on, called, leaned on, this kind of silence can feel like being erased. Do you remember the days when people came to you for advice? When they waited for your words before making big decisions? When they needed your calm voice to steady their storm? And now? Now maybe the phone doesn't ring as often. Maybe people make choices without telling you. Maybe they forget to ask how you feel, or worse, assume they already know. That quiet ache of being no longer consulted is something few people talk about, but it's real, and it carries weight. There's something deeply human about wanting to be needed, not for our ego, but for our purpose. We want to feel that we still matter, that our presence still makes a difference. But here's the truth that the world may forget to say out loud. You still matter, even if no one asks, even if no one notices, even if the people around you think they've outgrown your wisdom. Your presence is not measured by how many questions you answer. Sometimes your very being is the answer. Have you ever sat beside someone in silence and felt completely understood? No words exchanged, no advice given, just the comfort of presence? Maybe it was a parent, a spouse, a friend. Maybe it was long ago, or maybe recently. Who was the last person you sat with and felt, without needing to explain, "I'm safe here"? Now ask yourself this: have you ever given someone that same feeling? Because odds are, you have. Many times. You've been that quiet anchor, the calm in the room, the warm place where someone's shoulders finally relaxed. You might not even know it happened, but it did. You don't need to be needed in dramatic ways to still be a source of steadiness. A look of understanding, a hand on a shoulder, a memory shared at the right moment. These are not small things. These are the threads that hold people together. And in a world moving too fast, full of noise and half listening, your ability to truly be with someone, without judgment, without agenda, is more precious than ever. Maybe you feel like people don't see it. Maybe they forget to thank you. Maybe they don't realize that the calm in their life comes partly from your quiet strength. But let me say it clearly. Just because something isn't acknowledged doesn't mean it's not happening. You have shaped lives, not through force or position, but through presence. And presence, when it is real, is unforgettable. The Stoics believed that the highest form of living wasn't found in accolades or achievements, but in being a person of virtue, a person who could remain steady in the storm, who could be relied on, not for noise, but for clarity. Is that not what you've become? Think of the times you chose patience over pride, listening over lecturing, letting go over controlling. These things go unseen by most, but they are marks of the deeply needed, the kind of need that doesn't get applause, but holds everything together. There is no expiration date on being a guide, on being the one whose presence says you are not alone. Even if they don't ask you for directions anymore, they still look to you for something else, something quieter but just as vital. They look to you for how to handle change, for how to forgive what can't be fixed, for how to carry grief without bitterness, for how to love without needing to be the center. That is a form of wisdom the young cannot teach themselves. Have you noticed how sometimes people come and sit beside you, not to ask anything, but simply to be near? Maybe a child curls up next to you. Maybe a friend opens up over coffee. Maybe someone lingers after saying goodbye. They don't always say it aloud, but something in them feels safer around you. And that is no accident. You've become the kind of person whose presence matters more than your words. And still, that ache might return. The feeling of being overlooked, of no longer being essential. If it does, don't silence it. Just sit with it. Then ask yourself gently, am I really not needed? Or has the form of need changed? Not everyone knows how to express that they still need your steadiness, your memory, your way of being slow in a world that wants to rush. But they do need it. And even if they don't, you still matter. Because your value was never tied to how often people needed you. Your value is in who you are when no one's looking, when no one's asking, when no one's leaning in. That's the real you, and that's enough. So if today no one called, or no one asked your advice, or no one invited you into a decision, don't mistake that for irrelevance. Sometimes the most important people in the room are the quietest. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can offer is a story from your life that reminds someone what really matters. Have you told that story yet? Have you shared the moment when you learn what love costs, or what forgiveness requires, or what it's like to keep going when everything hurts? Someone in your life might be waiting for you to say it, not because they need the answer, but because they need to know they're not alone in the asking. Let your stories breathe. Let them out into the air. You are not taking up space. You are giving something that lasts longer than advice ever could. And if you're wondering where to begin, try this. Think of the last time you felt fully seen. Think of the person who gave you that feeling, the way they looked at you, the way their silence held more than words ever could. What if you are that person now, for someone else? You don't have to be needed in obvious ways to be deeply essential. Sometimes being needed means being the one who doesn't interrupt, being the one who remembers, being the one who remains kind, even when no one says thank you. And even if no one ever says the words, let me say them for them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying when it was hard. Thank you for being the one someone else could become themselves beside. There's something we often forget to question, an idea we carry so quietly, it becomes part of us without our permission. That idea says, if I'm not strong, I won't be loved the same way. We learn it not through harsh words, but through 1,000 tiny signals. The praise we got when we handled things well. The admiration we received when we never asked for help. The way people smiled when we made their lives easier. And so we thought, maybe love comes when I'm useful, dependable, invulnerable. But real love was never about strength. It was about presence. Not what you can do, but that you are there. Can you think of someone you loved deeply, even when they couldn't do anything for you? Maybe it was a parent in their final years. Maybe a friend who was going through something heavy. Maybe a child who had nothing to offer but their being. You didn't love them less because they were limited. You didn't pull away because they couldn't carry their share. If anything, their vulnerability made you lean in closer. Why should it be any different for you? The truth is, you don't have to earn love by being capable. You don't have to stay strong to stay loved. You are not less lovable just because you can't do everything you once could. It can be hard to believe that, especially when the world places so much value on independence. But the heart doesn't work that way. Love, real love, is not impressed by what you accomplish. It is drawn to who you are when everything else is stripped away. Have you ever had someone help you, really help you, and instead of feeling weak, you felt seen? Maybe it was something small, helping you up from a chair, tying a shoe, bringing you water, waiting patiently for you to find your words. And instead of shame, you felt something else rise in your chest. Something like warmth, like connection, like grace. That's what happens when we let ourselves be loved not for what we do, but for who we are. There's no shame in needing help, in being cared for, in no longer being the one who always holds everything up. Love isn't lost when we step out of the center. Sometimes it's found there, on the quiet edge, where we no longer perform but simply allow ourselves to be. You don't need to keep up to stay worthy of love. You don't have to impress to be embraced, and you don't have to hide your needs to remain close to those you care about. In fact, hiding them often creates distance. We think we're protecting others from burden, but sometimes what we're really doing is keeping them from loving us more deeply. Let me ask you this. Has anyone ever grown closer to you because you finally let your guard down? Because you allowed them to see your weariness? Because you stopped pretending you were okay and simply said, I need you right now? That moment that shared softness, is where real love begins. It's not in the moments where we hold it all together. It's in the moments where we let someone else hold us, even for a moment. The Stoics talked a great deal about strength, but not the kind you might think. They didn't value brute force or stoic silence in the modern sense. They valued clarity, honesty, alignment with nature. And nature, if you look closely, is not afraid of interdependence. A tree is not ashamed when the wind holds its branches. The ocean is not embarrassed when the moon draws its tides. Why should you feel shame when someone supports you? You are part of that same nature. You belong to the same rhythm of giving and receiving. Do you remember a time when someone brought you soup when you were sick? When a friend called just to say they were thinking of you? When a grandchild tucked a blanket around your shoulders? Maybe you didn't ask for any of it, but it came anyway. And in that moment, you weren't a burden. You were loved, fully, freely. Let yourself receive. Let yourself soften. You are not loved despite your needs. You are loved, period. And yes, sometimes people forget to show it. Sometimes they get caught up in their lives. Sometimes they mistake your silence for strength and don't know you're still aching. But that doesn't mean love is gone. Sometimes love just needs a door to walk through, and sometimes that door is your honesty, saying, I miss you, saying, I need help, saying, can you sit with me a while? Not because you're weak, but because you are human. You are allowed to be the one who receives now. For years, maybe you were the one who held it all, the meals, the schedules, the fears, the futures. And now that your hands are emptier, you might feel lost. But maybe they're not empty. Maybe they're just open. Open to receive, open to rest, open to be loved not for what you give, but for who you are. Can you allow that? Can you allow yourself to step out of the role of giver and simply be someone who is cherished? You don't have to prove yourself anymore. Love doesn't need proof. It just needs truth. And the truth is, your presence is enough. There's a quiet kind of power in that. One that doesn't shout, doesn't fix, doesn't perform, just is. That power is what the people around you need most. Not your strength, your softness, not your doing, your being, not your control, your trust. So let yourself rest. Let yourself receive. Let love find you right where you are. And if it feels unfamiliar, if it feels like a language you forgot how to speak, start small. Let someone pour your tea. Let someone ask how you're really feeling. Let someone sit with you in silence, without needing to fill it. You don't need to be the strong one anymore. You just need to be you. And that's more than enough. There's a kind of quiet that feels empty, disconnected, forgotten. And then there's another kind of quiet, one that feels full, grounded, and deeply awake. We often confuse the two. People look at someone sitting in silence and assume there's nothing happening, but sometimes that's when the most is happening. Have you noticed that people talk less as they age? Not because they don't have anything to say, but because they've learned not everything needs to be said. There is a difference between silence born from fear and silence born from wisdom. One closes off, the other opens up. Have you ever found yourself sitting in a group, listening to people talk over each other, offering opinions like throwing stones into a river, and you felt no urge to add yours? Not because you didn't have thoughts, but because you knew none of it needed your voice to be complete. That's not passive. That's not disengaged. That's discernment. It's knowing when to speak and when to simply hold space. The Stoics knew this well. They taught that while we cannot control the world, we can control our judgments, how we interpret, how we react, what meaning we give to the things around us. And sometimes the most powerful way to respond is not to react at all. Not out of apathy, but out of clarity. There is strength in not rushing to comment. There is grace in not correcting someone just to be right. There is wisdom in letting others find their own answers in their own time. When you've lived through enough cycles, joy and loss, rising and falling, love and grief, you begin to see how most things settle on their own. So you learn to sit still, to observe, to breathe before responding. Not because you're slow, but because you're seasoned. There's something the younger world doesn't always understand. It values fast thinking, quick wit, constant updates. It rewards noise. It fears stillness. But stillness is not absence. It's a deeper kind of presence. A quiet that listens before it speaks. A quiet that doesn't need to prove anything. You've likely been misunderstood for your silence. People might think you're distant, uninterested, tired, but maybe, just maybe, you're simply at peace. Or maybe you're choosing not to enter the fray because you've learned where energy is best spent. You see, silence can be a wall, but it can also be a doorway. It depends on what's behind it. And in your case, I believe what's behind it is depth. Depth born not from books or ideas, but from experience. From the kind of knowing that can't be taught. You know what it's like to wait for news you can't control, to sit with someone who's grieving and say nothing, because nothing is exactly what's needed. To watch a storm pass and realize the best thing you can do is not move at all. That's the kind of knowing silence can hold. And it's beautiful. Have you ever been with someone whose presence calmed the entire room without them saying a word? You've likely been that person. You've likely soothed a tense moment with a gentle gaze, interrupted a spiral of worry with a few steady breaths, offered reassurance not with speeches, but with your presence alone. People don't always thank you for that. They may not even realize it happened, but it mattered, and it still does. You might feel like your silence goes unnoticed now, that the world rushes past you, filling the air with sound and speed. But don't be fooled. Your stillness is not wasted. Stillness is a lighthouse in a noisy sea. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to be anchored. The Stoics believe that our peace comes not from changing the world, but from changing how we meet the world. And silence, when chosen, when rooted, is one of the strongest ways we meet it. Have you ever caught yourself smiling at something small? A bird landing nearby, a child discovering something, the lights shifting on the wall, and felt a kind of joy that didn't need to be shared? That's not withdrawal, that's presence. It's not detachment, it's deep connection, and it's often born in silence. Let others talk over each other. Let the world debate and hurry and perform. You stay grounded. You know things they haven't learned yet, and some of those things can't be taught with words. They're absorbed in the quiet moments, the pauses, the breaths between stories. You carry that. You embody that. You might not feel eloquent these days. Maybe your memory slips. Maybe your thoughts feel slow. But none of that diminishes your wisdom. Wisdom isn't how fast you can speak. It's how deeply you can see. So if you find yourself sitting quietly, watching the world unfold and wondering, do I still matter? Let me say this. Yes, you matter. Not because of what you say, not because of what you do, but because of who you've become through all you've lived. Your silence is not emptiness. It is a form of knowing. It is a choice to be present in a way the world has forgotten. And if there are days you miss being asked for your thoughts, remember this. The most powerful thoughts are often the ones we never speak, but live. You are living your wisdom. You don't need to declare it. You are a quiet river. Let others splash and stir the surface. You carry depth, so let your silence be your strength. Let it say, I have seen and survived and softened. Let it say, I no longer need to be right, I just need to be real. Let it say, I trust the world to unfold and I choose peace over noise. Because that is not giving up. That is growing wise. It's not easy, is it? Letting someone help you. Even when your hands are tired, even when your back aches, even when your mind whispers, please, just this once. You hesitate, not because you don't trust the other person, but because something inside still believes needing help is a kind of failure. You've been the helper for so long. The one who stayed up late folding laundry while others slept. The one who drove everyone where they needed to go. The one who knew what was missing from the fridge, from the house, from someone's heart. You remember what it felt like to be needed. It gave you purpose. It anchored your days. And now, that role has shifted. You still love, still care, still notice. But the tasks you once did effortlessly may now take longer, or hurt more, or require someone else's hands. And with that shift comes something harder than physical limitation. Comes the silent weight of guilt. Have you felt it? That little voice that says, I'm sorry for being slow. I hate to ask. I don't want to be a burden. You may smile through it, make light of it, even refuse help that's lovingly offered. But inside, there's a part of you grieving the role you used to play. Here's something you may need to hear. It's okay to be cared for, not just tolerated, not just accommodated, cared for, with gentleness, with reverence, with love. Because your needs do not make you weak. They make you human. You didn't believe others were weak when they leaned on you. You didn't think your children were a burden when they needed your arms. You didn't resent a friend who cried on your shoulder. You didn't measure their worth by how independent they were. Why hold yourself to a harsher standard? There is a strange kind of pride in refusing help. We think it keeps our dignity intact. We think it spares others discomfort. But more often than not, it closes the door on connection. Because when you allow someone to help you, you're not only receiving care, you're giving them the chance to love you in action. Think about that. Think about the quiet joy you felt when someone let you help them. Maybe your spouse let you tie their shoe when they could barely bend. Maybe your friend asked for advice when they didn't know who else to turn to. Maybe your child, now grown, called just to hear your voice when life was hard. That moment, when they let you in, wasn't weakness, it was trust, and it deepened your bond. Why not offer someone else the same chance? Why not let them love you not just with words, but with hands, with time, with presence? Yes, it may take practice. Yes, it may stir discomfort. But the deeper truth is this. There is dignity in receiving. There is grace in admitting, I could use a hand today. There is strength in saying, I don't have to carry it all by myself anymore. And there is beauty in letting your loved ones show up for you. Not because they pity you, but because they see you, all of you. And they want to walk alongside you, not ahead, not behind, side by side. Have you ever watched someone you love struggle because they were too proud to accept help? You wish they'd let you in. You wish they'd trust that your love was bigger than their shame. Now ask yourself, are you doing the same? You are not a burden. You are an invitation. An invitation to care deeply, to build reciprocity, to live in a love that goes both ways. You've done your part, and now perhaps your part looks different, not less, just different. You are still a giver of presence, of history, of perspective, of love. But in this chapter, you're also learning how to receive. That too is love. Have you noticed how the people who care for you don't seem to mind? The grandchild who wants to learn your story, the neighbor who brings over soup, the friend who notices when you're quieter than usual. They're not keeping score, they're showing up because you matter. And yes, some days are harder than others. Some days you may feel like a shadow of who you used to be. Some days you may long for the energy you once had. But those days don't make you unworthy. They make you real. And being real is where connection lives. So try it. Try letting someone help you with one small thing today. Let them open the jar. Let them carry the bag. Let them sit with you for no reason at all. And don't apologize for it. Don't say, sorry, I'm a bother. Don't say, I hate being like this. Just say, thank you. Let the moment be what it is, a moment of love in motion, and watch how it softens something. In them, in you, in the air around you. You deserve that. Not because of all you've done, not because of how strong you used to be, but because you are here, still, breathing, beloved. Let that be reason enough. Let that open the door. And if someone reaches out to help you tomorrow, let them. Even if you could do it yourself, even if it takes longer, even if it feels strange, let them. Because love doesn't need to be efficient, it just needs to be shared. And your willingness to receive may be the most generous gift of all. You've heard it said, maybe too often, that age brings wisdom. But what they forget to tell you is this: age also brings visibility into the things that last, and the courage to let go of the things that don't. And one of the things that lasts, perhaps more than anything, is your dignity. Time may change many things. Skin softens, memory flickers, steps slow, but your worth, that doesn't wear down with the years. It deepens. You are not fading. You are being refined. The world likes to show us polished surfaces, smooth, flawless, untouched, as if perfection means absence of imperfection, as if we're meant to live without ever cracking. But you know better, don't you? You know that life leaves marks, that hearts break, that bodies bend, that sometimes just making it to another morning is an act of quiet triumph. And all those marks, they're not damage, they're stories. That wrinkle near your eyes, that's a memory of laughter, repeated again and again until it settled into your skin. The softness in your hands, that's the echo of every meal you prepared, every child you lifted, every wound you soothed. The weight in your shoulders, that's the burden you carried when no one else could or would. You don't need to erase those signs. You don't need to hide what life has shaped. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi. You might have heard of it. It's the practice of repairing broken pottery, not with glue that hides the cracks, but with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The break isn't covered, it's illuminated. The flaw becomes the most beautiful part of the object. Now imagine, if your life was a work of kintsugi, every grief you survived, every fear you faced, every part of you that broke open and let the light in, what if those were the gold? What if your dignity was not in pretending nothing ever happened, but in letting the cracks shine? You see, dignity is not about being untouched by time. It's about being transformed by it, without being diminished. You are not less now. You are more visible to yourself, more aware, more distilled. If your life were a sculpture, a painting, a piece of living art, where would the artist's hand have carved deepest? Where did the light change direction in your story? Where did you crack and grow more whole because of it? Take a moment, breathe into that. You don't need to answer aloud, just know this. The parts of you that feel most weathered may also be the parts that hold the most strength, not because they're shiny, but because they endured. And isn't that what real beauty is? Not in smoothness, but in survival, in presence, in truth. We live in a world that tries to sell us anti-aging creams and silver-covering dyes. It tells us quietly but insistently that youth equals value. That visibility fades with every candle on the cake. But you've already outlived that illusion. You've already proven that life doesn't end when your reflection changes. If anything, it begins in a new way. Now is the time you see things more clearly, not because your eyes are sharper, but because your heart is. You can tell what matters and what doesn't with a kind of precision that only comes from having carried too much and finally choosing to set some of it down. That is dignity, and it doesn't whisper, it radiates. From how you walk into a room with quiet confidence, from how you say less but mean more, from how you choose presence over performance. So when you look at yourself, really look, what do you see? Do you see what's missing? Or do you see what has taken root in its place? Because you have gained more than you've lost. You've gained the kind of patience that doesn't need to fix everything. You've gained the kind of love that doesn't demand to be returned. You've gained the kind of silence that holds the weight of years. And no, that doesn't mean the hard days are gone. There may still be moments of doubt, of wishing your hands were steadier, your steps lighter, your body more cooperative. But none of those things erase the value you carry. You are not obsolete. You are original, and that makes you irreplaceable. You might not hear it often. The world doesn't always know how to praise aging with the reverence it deserves. But I'll say it now. Your dignity is not only intact, it's glowing. It's in the way you endure. It's in the way you soften, not shatter. It's in the way you still notice beauty, even on your hardest days. So let this be a gentle reminder. Your value does not expire. It evolves. And the longer you live, the more that value becomes undeniable. Not because of what you can do, but because of who you've become. If your life were a vessel, repaired by time, traced with gold, held together by love and loss and resilience, where would the brightest lines shine? That's a question worth sitting with, because you are not a burden. You are a masterpiece in motion, and your story, every cracked, mended, golden line part of it, is still unfolding. Sometimes we think we need to do something grand to matter, to fix something, to teach something, to leave a mark. But what if the most powerful thing you could ever offer is simply your presence, not your solutions, not your opinions, not your old strength, just your being? In a world spinning faster than ever, where people scroll instead of speak, where noise is mistaken for value, where visibility is confused with worth, your quiet presence is a kind of healing, a kind of rare, steady light. You don't have to fight for attention anymore. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to make the most of every moment. Some moments are already enough, simply because you were there to witness them. Have you ever noticed how the most comforting people are often the ones who say the least? They're the ones who don't interrupt, who don't rush your feelings, who don't make it about them. They just stay, quietly, lovingly, present. You've become that kind of person, the kind whose being is enough, the kind whose presence says, "You're safe here." The kind who doesn't need to fill the space to hold it. And maybe no one told you that lately. Maybe you've gone days or weeks without hearing that your presence still matters. Not in some abstract way, but in the real, grounded way that changes the atmosphere of a room. But let me tell you now, it does. It matters when you sit beside someone in their grief and don't offer cliches. It matters when you smile at the cashier who looks tired. It matters when you show up to the dinner table, even if you didn't cook. It matters when you pause, when you notice, when you listen. You don't have to be the center to be essential. The sun is never in the room, but its light fills everything. That's your presence now. Software steady, quietly transformative. Can you allow yourself to believe that? That just by being here, right here, in this chapter, you are offering something rare? It's easy to forget, especially when the world seems to value speed, youth, noise. But what it's actually craving, desperately, is the kind of calm depth you carry. The kind of presence that's not in a hurry. The kind that remembers how to breathe. The kind that sees beyond the surface of things. You carry that. And you don't need to prove it. You just need to allow it. You are no longer here to chase meaning. You are here to be meaning. To embody what stillness feels like in a room. To let others find rest beside you, even if they don't know why. That is your offering. That is your gift. And if ever you feel forgotten, remember this. You are not noise. You are not fading. You are not done. You are presence. You are the calm in the center of the storm. You are the slow breath that reminds others how to slow down too. You are the one who stays, not because you must, but because you can. So be here, not with urgency, not with apology, just with presence. Let your life be what it is. Let your presence do what it does. And if you need a place to begin, just take one breath. In, outside. Feel it? That is enough. You are still here, and that is everything. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me. If something in these words touched a part of you that's often left in silence, I'm grateful you stayed. Your presence here matters, and wherever you are, whatever you're carrying, may you walk forward knowing this. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are still becoming, and I'm honored to have met you right here in this moment.